January 25th, 2021, Troy City Council meeting. I'm happy to call this meeting to order and ask for the roll call. Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Baker?
Here.
Councilmember Abraham?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Brooks?
Here.
Councilmember Chamberlain Krenga?
Here.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Here.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Here.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Here.
All present this evening. First on the agenda is certificates of recognition and special presentations. We have one this evening. C1 is a proclamation to recognize the celebration of Yoga for Health, Health for Humanity, Surya Namaskar Yana 2021, January 16th to the 31st, 2021, and I will read that into the record this evening. Whereas yoga is an ancient Hindu practice developed thousands of years ago in the Indian subcontinent for maintaining spiritual, mental, and physical well-being, and whereas Hindu Swayamsevak Sangh, HSS, is a nonprofit charitable organization with over 235 branches in 173 cities in 32 states, including 4 branches here in the state of Michigan, through which it conducts a Hindu values education program and community service activities such as food drives, providing hot meals to shelters, and providing masks to senior care and first responders in several cities across Michigan. And whereas the Surya Namaskar, also known as sun salutation, integrates simple yoga postures that, along with breathing techniques, provide the practitioner with the key health benefits of yoga practice. And whereas HSS is organizing the annual Health for Humanity Yogathon, or Surya Namaskar Yana 2021, with the goal to create awareness about yoga and its advantages in achieving a healthy body, mind, and spirit, and thereby promote friendship, mutual understanding, and good health among all members of the community. And whereas HSS initiated this project in 2006, and participants from over 42 states in the United States of America have participated in this event regardless of individual faith and belief. And whereas the Bharatiya Temple in the city of Troy has participated in this event for the past 14 years. Yoga enthusiasts, yoga studios, local schools, and community organizations from across the United States are committed to participating in this event. And whereas anyone, regardless of age, religion, gender, or race, is invited to include Surya Namaskar as part of their daily physical and spiritual practice to contribute to achieving this goal. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the City of Troy City Council recognizes January 16th through the 31st, 2021 as Yoga for Health, Health for Humanity, Surya Namaskar Yana 2021 in the City of Troy. And be it further resolved that the City of Troy thanks Hindu Swayamsevak Sangh for organizing its annual Health for Humanity Yogathon to promote the spiritual, mental, and physical well-being of all members of the community, and for helping to preserve and promote the ancient heritage and cultural values around the world. This proclamation is presented this 25th day of January, 2021. I miss not presenting these proclamations in person to people. It still is kind of strange, but we'll get back to that for sure. So that concludes certificates of recognition and special presentations this evening. There are no carryover items. There are no public hearings. So we'll move on to public comment for items either on or off the agenda. And as a reminder, as long as we're meeting virtually, you can submit public comment by 4 p.m. on the day of the meeting to email public comment at troymi.gov or by leaving a voicemail at 248-524-3302. And City Clerk Dixon will read or play them into the record for us during this section. So I'll turn it over to City Clerk Dixon and ask if there's any public comment this evening.
Thank you, Mayor. We have one email and one voicemail tonight. The first email is from a resident who named John Hillert, who said that the resident asking for permission to have chickens at his residence on Eastport. He said, that's fine with me. That was his comment. Now we have one voicemail.
Hi, I'm County Commissioner Tom Kuhn, representing you, the City of Troy, and Troy residents in the 11th District. I'd like to give a brief report from the County Commission. It's a new term, and the County Commission has new committees. I am honored to represent you on the county's Public Health and Safety Committee. Our committee has oversight of the county's health department, including Oakland County's COVID pandemic response. The vaccine has been a big issue recently. Actually, the county has great capacity to provide vaccines. Once they become more widely available, we can store up to 900,000 vaccine doses and inject 12,000 to 20,000 doses a week. Currently, the county has a sign-up on its website, oakgov.com. Just hit the vaccine icon and follow the prompts. In December, I brought a resolution to increase the priority of teachers and school personnel receiving the vaccine because of the importance of in-person education for our children and the importance of protecting our educators and staff. The resolution received unanimous bipartisan support from the Commission. At the start of this Commission session, I urge my colleagues to adopt a series of rule changes to improve the openness, transparency, and accountability of county government. Again, many of these rule changes received broad bipartisan support and were passed by the Commission at our initial meeting of the year. I look forward to serving and representing you, our residents, and the City of Troy for the next 2 years. If anyone wants to contact me or get information concerning county services, just call my cell phone, 248-227-2462. That's 248-227-2462. You can also reach me by email. My personal email is tekUhn@AOL.com. Again, that's tekUhn@AOL.com. Again, this is Tom Kuhn, your County Commissioner. Thanks for allowing me to speak today.
That is all the public comment for tonight.
Okay, that concludes those who participated in public comment in our virtual meeting by either emailing public comment at troymi.gov or leaving a voicemail at 248-524-3302. Next on the agenda is an opportunity for City Administration or City Council to respond to any of the public comment they heard this evening. I see City Manager Miller shaking his head. Well, Councilmember Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you to Commissioner Tom Kuhn for his message. I know that I went on the county website, signed up myself, my wife, and my daughter to get in line for our vaccines. We probably won't get them till down the road. And I know my mom got actually a week and a half, got her first shot of the vaccine, the Pfizer one, a week and a half ago. She signed up through Beaumont. And I heard you can also sign up through Henry Ford. So anyone out there who is eligible, if you're 65 plus, teachers, first responders, and there's a few other topics or a few other categories too, but you can all sign up through all those different sources. So I thank Commissioner Kuhn for bringing that up. And then regarding the chickens, has the Animal Control Appeals Board met yet since COVID? I know that we recently made an appointment last year, but I haven't heard anything with that. I know they might have had some stuff. I think City Attorney Bloom.
The Attorney Bloom looks like she's ready to respond.
Yes, there is a meeting. The first meeting will be this week. So I believe that public comment would also be forwarded to the Animal Control Appeal Board as well.
Great. Glad to hear it.
We'll make sure that is City Manager Miller or City Clerk Gibson. Okay, I just want to make sure. Any other comment from Council or City Administration? I just want to piggyback on what Councilmember Hamilton said and thanking Commissioner Kuhn. I think I've said it here before, but he, through this pandemic, he's been very proactive in sending information to me via email, which I often forwarded on to City Administration, whether it's financial in nature or not. So we appreciate our city commissioners, our county commissioners here in Troy. Commissioner Penny Lubes also has been an avid participant giving me information, so I thank both of them. And Commissioner Kuhn, look forward to having you in person when we're allowed to do that again and have these legislative updates. I'm sure we'll have a bunch of you lined up and ready to go when we're able to do that. But we appreciate it. Thank you very much. That concludes City Council and City Administration response to public comment. We have no postponed items this evening, so we'll move on to regular business. First up is board and committee appointments. There are no mayoral appointments this evening, but we do have some city council appointments, so I'll hand it over to Mayor Pro Tem Brooks.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like, let me just pull it up here. I would like to appoint to the Historic District Study Committee for term expiring ad hoc, Barbara Chambers, Timothy McGee, and Dr. Kent Voigt.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Brooks and supported by Councilmember Erickson Galt. The Troy City Council appoints to the Historic District Study Committee for the term that expires ad hoc, Barbara Chambers, Timothy McGee, and Dr. Kent Voigt. Any discussion? Take the vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Baker,
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brooks,
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain Craig,
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt,
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you to those three for continuing to serve on that important committee. Mayor Pro Tem Brooks.
Yes. And then I would also like to appoint to the Parks and Recreation Board for a term expiring July 31st, 2021, Tim Fulcher, and for the term expiring September 30th, 2021, John Chuck Shepherd.
Support.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Brooks and supported by Councilmember Hamilton, the Troy City Council appoints to the Parks and Recreation Board Tim Fulcher as the Troy School Board of Education rep for the term expiring July 31st, 2021, and John Chuck Shepherd for the term expiring September 30th, 2021. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Abraham,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brooks,
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain Craig,
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt,
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick,
Yes.
Mayor Baker.
Yes. Motion carries. We thank both of them for willing to serve on this important board also. That concludes City Council appointments this evening. Next up is I2, Board and Committee nominations. No mayoral nominations this evening, so I'll turn it over to Mayor Pro Tem Brooks. Do you have any City Council nominations?
I do not.
All right. Next up on the agenda then is I3, request for closed session. I will go ahead and move I3, request for closed session. Be it resolved that Troy City Council shall meet in closed session as permitted by MCL 15.268H, MCL 15.2431G.
Support.
Moved by the chair, supported by Councilmember Erickson Galt, that we approve I3 as read into the record. Any discussion? Vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Pro Tem Brooks,
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain Craig,
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt,
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick,
Yes.
Mayor Baker,
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham.
Yes.
Motion carries. Next on the agenda is I4, 2021 City Council meeting schedule. This will be introduced by Assistant City Manager Bob Bruner. Hi, Bob.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Glad to be with you all tonight. Tonight we're here to talk about scheduling some additional special council meetings. Before we get into that, the memo states that the City Council's personnel evaluation special meeting is scheduled for April 5th. That's what was proposed when City Council scheduled that meeting back on November 9th. But what the City Council actually adopted, actually approved, and actually scheduled the meeting on was Tuesday, March 23rd. So the memo in tonight's packet is wrong in that regard. The 23rd is a regular Planning Commission meeting, and so we may have to revisit that date later, because at this point we don't have the capacity to run 2 remote meetings simultaneously. But we'll sort that out later. In the meantime, know that meeting is scheduled for the March 23rd, not April 5th. But tonight, what's being proposed is a joint meeting with the Downtown Development Authority, and February 3rd has been proposed. City Manager Miller has verified that date with the chairman of the DDA, as well as a Global Troy Advisory Committee joint meeting on March 10th. So February 3rd will be here soon. Time flies when you're having fun. And that will also be, if council chooses to adopt that date, it'll be a busy week because there is a special meeting to discuss the Code of Ethics on Monday, February 1st. But those are the 2 meetings that we'd like you to consider tonight, and those are the dates that have been proposed, but ultimately the decision is yours.
Thank you, Assistant City Manager Bruner. Any questions from council? Councilmember Chamberlain-Craig.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wondered, what time were we considering for those 2 meetings?
The council's rules of procedure state that special meetings are to occur at 6 p.m., but that's also something that the council has modified and can modify in the future.
Thank you.
Can I ask a quick question? I don't know, maybe this is a Lori question. Does there have to be quorum of both boards for these meetings to happen? Meaning,
Yes.
Okay. And do we have any, I know that Chairman Kurlik is available on the 3rd, but do we have a reasonable expectation that enough of the other DDA members will be able to be present on February 3rd? Because it's kind of short notice. Mark?
Mayor and council, we have not contacted them, but my experience is when city council schedules a meeting, usually that board, almost every time the board definitely has a quorum. But to be honest, I have not checked with everyone. I just made sure that the chairman Kurlik would be available.
Okay. I think Global Troy the following month, that's their normal scheduled meeting time, I believe. So I think they'll be available for that one. But I'm just curious about the DDA, but willing to risk it. I'm sure, like you said, Mark, if we schedule it, they will come, right? Is that what you basically said? Any other questions? Would anyone like to move a resolution? Councilmember Erickson Gall.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move I-4 2021 City Council meeting schedule as printed in the agenda.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Erickson Galt, supported by Councilmember Chamberlain-Krianga, that we approve I-4 2021 City Council meeting schedule for those 2 meetings as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? All right, the vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Chamberlain-Craig.
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt.
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton.
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick.
Yes.
Mayor Baker.
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brooks.
Yes.
Motion carries, and I know both of these boards will be very excited to have these joint meetings. I know Global Troy, for instance, has been trying for a long time, so they'll be very excited, and DDA's got a lot of important stuff as well that has come up, so that's good news. Thank you, Bob. Next up on the agenda is I-5 budget amendment, grant revenue, other revenue, and election expenditures. And it looks like it will be introduced by Chief Financial Officer Rob Melzik. Hi, Rob.
Hi. Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it. Just before you tonight, it's my pleasure to discuss with you the grant opportunities that we have taken advantage of so far to date. As an update from our October memo that we gave you, we have received just shy of $4 million of federal funds, primarily from the CARES Act. We've also received another $58,000 of non-federal funds for the election, pushing us just over $4 million. The good news is that the majority of these funds were from public safety, and that the state made the presumption that all public safety time at the beginning of COVID was spent on COVID. Thus, we were able to take all of our public safety time and get reimbursed. Not all of it, we submitted over $3 million worth, but we got $1.5 million from the state on that through a pass-through. And that we're also going to, on their website just recently, they're still auditing, and it looks like we're going to get another $520,000 before the end of the fiscal year. So great news on that point. So the bottom line is we have revenue increases for a budget amendment of $4,051,000. What we're offsetting that on the revenue side, though, is the impact that COVID's had on our other operations. So we're lowering our revenue for recreation and community center revenue by $2.8 million. And we're also lowering our court fines by $300,000. I had talked to Lori Bloom about that, and it looks like there's just a lot less activity at the court as it relates to fines. And then we're also lowering our building permit and admin fees, totaling another $800,000. And then what I did is we looked at all the expenditures through December 31st. And what we found was out of all the departments, there was one department that's over budget as of today. And that was the city clerk election. And I sat down with Aileen and we went through and we looked at how much she would need. And so there's a $55,000 budget amendment for that too. And that was due to the additional cost of training, the additional people, the bonuses, and everything else that was due to COVID-19. So before you then tonight is this amendment that will basically increase revenue by $4 million, decrease revenue by 3.9, and then add an additional $55,000. We'll come back to you in June, and then we'll do one more budget amendment before the end of the year to capture any additional revenue we're going to get. And then on top of that, if there's any departments that are over budget, that would be our normal process anyway to come to you for a budget amendment for those as well, specifically related to COVID. So I'm open to answer any questions that you may have for me.
Thank you, Rob. Any questions from council? No questions. Someone like to move a resolution? Councilmember Abraham.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move I-5, budget amendment, grant revenue, other revenue, and election expenditures as printed on the late submittal.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Abraham, supported by Councilmember Hoderick, that we approve I-5, budget amendment, grant revenue, other revenue, and elections expenditures as printed on the updated late submittal. Any discussion? I just want to thank Rob, you and your team, and everyone on city management who's worked so hard to go after these the grants and get our fair share, I guess is the way to put it, here in Troy. And really appreciate, I know it's not an easy thing, not that it ever is with the finances, in my opinion, but you've worked really hard to make sure this is getting the best return for the city of Troy. And also, so thank you. And I'm also really struck by how many, the decrease in revenue related to the community center. It's really interesting to see how that's been hit hardest probably of all of our public assets like that. And makes me appreciate all that they do that much more, I think, when they come back and they are working at full operations. So looking forward to that day again. And
Right. Hey, Mayor, one other comment is that now because our revenue from the federal government is going to be over $750,000, that means we're going to have a single audit. So basically what that means is that our auditors will come in and do additional testing and control testing to make sure that, yes, we've spent those funds the way they were appropriated and meant to be.
Very good. Well, I'm very confident that we have. So I appreciate that. I know we don't cut corners here, Troy, so I appreciate that. Councilmember Hamilton, I saw your hand go up.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, just a thought popped in my head to CFO Malzik. I know we'll probably get our quarterly update on the budget and everything soon. One thing I'm curious about, and I'm just going to say, you probably don't have the answer right now, but just that we can see how the expenditures for recreation look. Because obviously, because everything was closed, I imagine the expenditures went down. I don't know how they went down compared to the revenue went down, but I'm curious to see those numbers. I don't recall the first quarter numbers. They probably were in there somewhere, but I'm looking forward to looking at that to see how the shutdown has affected that.
So Council Member Hamilton, I sat down with Elaine Bowe and Brian Gould, and we looked at those numbers, and this was back in December, and at a high level, the revenue's down 2.8 million, but the expenditures are also down, and they're down about 2.1 million. So, so because of this extra federal money, we should be in very good shape by the end of the fiscal year. With budget just starting right now, all the department heads are starting to submit their budgets, and one of the things we ask them to do is analyze their financial statements through December and give us what their forecast is through the end of the year. Then we work with them, fine tune it. And so when I get those numbers, that's when I'll come back to you guys with a stronger forecast for the total general fund and rest of the organization.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other discussion on this item? All right, a vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Erickson Galt,
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick,
Yes.
Mayor Baker,
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brooks,
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain Krenga.
Yes.
Motion carries. And again, thank you, Rob.
Thank you, Council.
Next up on the agenda is I-6, Standard Purchasing Resolution 5, approval to expend budgeted funds, Town Center parking lot replacement, and it will be introduced by Public Works Director Kurt Bovensiedt. Good evening, Kurt.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you. Have another exciting project bringing you tonight. If we could bring up the presentation, please.
Kurt only gets the exciting ones. I don't know. Something. I'm
very fortunate that I've come to this body with a lot of exciting projects, and this one's no different. I say it's a close second to Trails and Pathways for me. As I mentioned, the Town Center parking lot is a project that we've considered for many years. Next slide, please. The project site is the old parking lot that it borders Town Center Drive, just north of the community center there. And it's been an old parking lot for quite some time. You know, the community center opened in 2002, and before that was the old Troy High School. Through the Civic Center redevelopment process, we learned a lot about this site. And one of the lessons learned was the fact that it has to stay community focused because it was purchased with bond money. So we looked at different ways what we could do with this lot in the Civic Center redevelopment process, and then it kind of stalled out. But the parking lot always stood out as kind of in disrepair, and it could still be something. Next slide, please. So this is an aerial view of what the parking lot currently looks like. As I mentioned, it's still the old lot from the Troy High School. It wasn't redeveloped with the community center. It wasn't redone with the community center because it was intended to be overflow parking. We have used it on occasion for overflow parking, but really what it's become useful for is Troy Family Days, when it creates parking for the Carnival company to park their vehicles, and then participant parking in there as well. The lot has become in such disrepair that we have closed it off because we deemed it has become a liability. Next slide, please. So this slide shows a lot of the utilities, and the objective of this slide is just to say that we've been looking at this for quite some time. We looked at this site to redevelop it with community development block grant funds. Unfortunately, there's a lot of restrictions that come with federal funds when we look at demoing a parking lot. With those community development funds, we could turn it to grass, but we could never do anything with it after that. We could never develop it into a park or anything like that. So that was unfortunate. We also looked at partnering with MDOT and Toby Walsh for the I-75 construction. They were looking for a lot to be able to do marshaling out of and store things. But Toby Walsh did not like our proposal, what we wanted it to look like afterwards. So that was also declined. Next slide, please. So the original vision for this lot was to keep it some sort of parking lot overflow, but taking a green aspect to it, looking at what we call grass pavers. So grass pavers is an infrastructure underneath the grass that can support vehicles, drought tolerant grass. You don't get the rutting. Is very popular in other parts of the country. As we discussed this with the team, which include OHM, and I forgot to mention Chris Ozak with OHM, one of the designers, is on the call as well if we have any questions specific to design or engineering that I might not be able to answer. So as we started looking at this and developing this idea of what more could have been, it just kept on growing and growing and growing. And then with the passing of the millage for the library opening on the 7th day, recognizing that the farmers market is going to need a different location to host the farmers market, the idea just kept growing. So this is what we came up with. It serves a lot of purposes, but I think the most important thing is there's a lot of opportunity for growth. We're setting the foundation here with developing an open space that can be programmed and programmed so differently, it can be added onto in so many different ways. Next slide, please. So here's a couple of examples of different types of events it could host. As I mentioned, we're still looking at doing some of those grass pavers in the north side so we can still have vehicles on there, which was really important in the farmers market because a lot of the farmers market vendors bring vehicles in, food trucks, and need access directly behind their tents. So we took that into consideration. Outdoor movies, although we didn't do a whole lot, we host annually pre-COVID a Park-It event and other outdoor movies. So this could be a perfect spot for outdoor movies. And then again, large events, looking at what we used to host inside, and people are looking for more opportunities to host those types of events outside, craft shows, and different events that the community center would typically host inside. Next slide, please. So through the budget process, we asked for $500,000 to fund what we originally thought was just a green parking lot. And again, as the idea grew, and with that comes a growing appetite as well. These are engineered estimates based on the concepts that are before you. These are not firm costs, but it is likely if council approves going through with this concept that we would likely either budget additional funds for next fiscal year or ask for an amendment when we came to council with the contract. Next slide, please. So it is very difficult, as Mayor Baker mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, to present virtually. And it is probably even more difficult to express an idea or a concept virtually. So we engaged OHM to come up with a unique way to present this idea to City Council. So IT, if you could pull up the video, please. IT, there doesn't appear to be any sound.
You want me to sing, Kurt? That's not what you meant. Oh.
That would be lovely. If we can't get the sound going, I could talk through it, but the sound is pretty important to the. Almost there, Dave. I apologize for the technical difficulty as we try to get the sound going. As I mentioned, introducing projects like this is preferably in person. The drone footage is something unique to OHM, and they discovered that it was really, really good to be able to display a project and get constituent buy-in. And this is something that we can put on the city's website that people can become more familiar with the project as well. Dave, if we can't get the sound going, maybe we can just start over one more time and I'll talk through it. Thank you. And thank you, Council, for your patience. So as we travel from Big Beaver, here is identifying the site. It kind of gives you an overview and how the entire Civic Center campus is linked together through these sidewalks and pathways. And the project site wouldn't be any different. There would be linked through that pathway system too. So it'd be easily for someone to walk from City Hall to the library, community center, and continue on into this new green space and this programmable space. And it also links to the park just to the east. So, and we know the Troy Trail goes through that park. So the Troy Trail links to this new space as well. And as I mentioned, the community center really offers a great partnership in this space because they can provide programming, and the Parks and Recreation Board actually suggested that the space become reservable, and it could be potentially a source of revenue for the community center, much like the shelters. So here's a real good concept of what it would look like, bird's eye view of hosting the farmers market in this space. The space is actually 3 acres, so it's pretty large and accommodating to all sorts of different events. And we'll see here a stage where we could have the concerts in the park hosted here. And as you can see, there's pedestrian lighting throughout the space as well to be able to illuminate the area at dark or at dusk. And here we have an example of a large event. Parking right now would be accommodated in the north parking lot of the community center. Often it's labeled as the senior parking. Eventually, we would like to provide a pedestrian bridge that crosses the drain there to be able to really connect so people aren't walking along that north-south drive off the town center to the community center. Next slide, please. So here's our schedule that we're looking for if council does approve tonight. Again, the concept began in August and grew into what you saw tonight. We look at final design through March, which would include the engineering design, which is what council would be approving tonight to expend capital funds to begin the engineering phase of this concept. We would be bidding the project in April and May, and then constructing June through September. Although we would like this sooner than later, especially with the farmers market needing a new home. But after meeting with Cindy Stewart, we've decided to move the farmers market to the park, would just be to the east of this, along the pathway there. This way people can get used to coming to the area, and we're not really moving locations that far. People would still be accustomed to coming to that area for the farmers market. This concept was presented to the Parks and Recreation Board on January 14th, and they loved it, which I was very happy. Again, most of the comments were, how can we make this done faster? How can we program this space? Let's start booking it, type of thing. So it received very, very good support with the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. And as I mentioned, Chris Ozeg with OHM is on the line as well if we have any specific questions to the engineering or the concept.
Thank you, Kurt. Appreciate it very much. In your narration instead of the music, it worked. So, any questions from council, either for Kurt or from Chris from OHM? Mayor Pro Tem Brooks.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Kurt, for this presentation. It's great. A question that I had was about Troy Days. Would this space be appropriate for Troy Days? And is there any concern that because there's a lot of the grass that potentially like putting things into that lawn or could tear it up.
Sure. The first question, Troy Days. The idea has not been presented to Troy Days. The Troy Days Executive Committee has its first meeting this Thursday. This space is not part of Troy Days' contract. However, if Troy Days feels that it could be beneficial to move some of the festival over to this area and City Council would allow that through a contract amendment, we could certainly look at that. They have been put on notice since we've been considering this lot that the carnival vendor would have to find a new place to park at a minimum if the lot wasn't available. So they know that we've been working on redeveloping this area. They're not aware of what it's being proposed to look like. And the second question, as far as the turf is going to be designed to be able to withstand, drought tolerant, and the abuse that it's subject to take. It's not going to be golf course turf. It's going to be designed to be able to take the elements that we're going to throw at it with programming.
Thank you. And I do want to say, oh, sorry.
No, I was going to ask if you had anything else. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that when I reviewed the project, I really did like it. And I really appreciated that you really considered and took into account a variety of uses for the area and the space. So I like it.
Councilmember Erickson Galt, I think you had a hand up.
Thank you, Mayor. I also love this design. I'm looking forward to see what the final design will be. I think it's going to be a really exciting, wonderful addition for Troy. My only question is, it looks like this design doesn't directly impact the skate park. Is that correct? It's going to pretty much stay the same?
That's correct. Although the skate park was always intended to be temporary at its location, it's become a permanent fixture, and I think it's become a real asset to the city. Although it's not probably as nice as some of our surrounding skate parks, I've talked to skateboarders, and they appreciate that park because it is smaller and it is not as busy. One of the reasons why we like to keep it there is because a family can come and it has multiple activities. So if their kids want to go to the skate park where they watch a movie or listen to a concert, it provides a lot of different activities in one area.
Thank you. That was my only question. Thank you so much for that design. It's great.
Sounded like you almost said a council concert, Kurt. That I thought of us doing a concert of that. I'm thinking, I don't think anyone's going to want to listen. But I'm sorry. Councilmember Hoderick, I think you were raising your hand.
I've been around a while watching discussions about this space that's been in dire need of improvement for a long time. This is exciting to see. I'm glad the Parks and Rec Board were jumping up and down about it. Thank you, OHM, for your assistance. And, listening to Mr. Bovenseat review this tonight, I don't know if everybody's picking up on all the cues he's taken from the conversations over many years. I could hear you comprehending a lot of different ideas, and he took into consideration a lot of things that we've heard people talk about through various discussions over the years. And I just wanted to, hat tip to you for comprehending that. And I do, you touched on it, but a really beautiful benefit of this space and enhancing it is its connectivity to all the other activities that are around already in our Civic Center. And it helps us realize what people love about our Civic Center property to begin with, and it just expands on it. So it looks really great. I'm really excited about it. And this was really a long time coming. This was not, if folks are just paying attention maybe to us and discussions about this for the first time, this just didn't get pulled out of the air. And I really do appreciate the approach you took. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what we can do. Make it happen fast. No, make it right. Make sure it's right. But I look forward to it. Thanks.
Any other questions? I had just a quick question. I don't know if it's for you, Kurt, or if it's for Chris, but what is the shelf life for those grass pavers, assuming moderate parking on them? I mean, how long will those last without needing repair or replacement? You know?
I'm not sure. I'll defer to Chris, and if he doesn't know, we'll definitely get that answer back to you.
Hello, everyone. I always here. I probably have my faux pas of leaving my camera off. I probably need to put it on, but you know, just like any brick pavers that you install, if they're taken care of and they have some good maintenance, should be able to get a good 20 years out of it. So really, again, it's a maintaining thing. You know, we're going to design it for a long-term system and solution, and you know, but I would think you can definitely get a good 15, 20 years out of them. And again, it's really about the maintenance program that's involved with it. So.
Very good. I appreciate that. I have a feeling that they're going to get a lot more use than we anticipate because it's going to be such a popular place. So that was my question. I appreciate that. Any other questions for Chris while he's on? Doesn't look like.
I wish everyone to check out the video because I think some of the points you touched on, there's a little narration in the beginning that, you know, for us working with Kurt and his team on this, it's really the aha moment was we were looking at your civic center and I'm like, why do we need to build another parking lot? But you need something to connect all these spaces and something that's flexible. And so that's really the theme of the narration in the video. And everyone at OHN is excited for this project as well. So our team's looking to get this thing out there and see it in action after it gets built this summer. So thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. And I'm hoping, Kurt, you said that we'll get that on the city's YouTube and maybe on our social media. I'm sure we'll all share it as well so the community can see it. Any other questions before we move a resolution? Somebody like to move the resolution? Councilmember Chamberlain-Cranga.
Thank you, Mayor. I also love this project and all of its place-making potential. So delighted to move I-6, Standard Purchasing Resolution 5, approval to expend budgeted funds, Town Center parking lot replacement as printed in the council packet.
Support.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Chamberlain-Cranga, supported by Councilmember Hoderick, that we approve I-6, Standard Purchasing Resolution 5, approval to expend budgeted funds, Town Center parking lot replacement as printed in the agenda. Any discussion other than what's been said? I'll just say again, Kurt, thank you for all the work you've done. Ellen said it very well, that you've got pieces of information you've heard over many years built into this, and whether that's from different council members and different councils at this point, and also the surveying you've done out in the community. I think that's reaping great rewards, and this project will be very successful as a result. I also love to see the water fill into those drains in that initial drawing. It's nice to see some water features in that Civic Center property as well. So I appreciate that very, very much. And also, as always, glad to have the Parks and Rec's full support and excitement about the project. That says we're doing something right. So the vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain-Cranga?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Motion carries. Very excited. Next up on the agenda is the consent agenda. Would anybody like to remove an item for discussion, separate discussion this evening? Probably not. Anybody like to move the consent agenda this evening? Councilmember Erickson Galt.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move all of the items on the consent agenda as printed.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Erickson Galt, supported by Councilmember Hamilton, that we approve all items on the consent agenda as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? For the vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brooks,
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain Krenga,
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt,
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton.
Yes.
Motion carries. All items on the consent agenda have been approved this evening. Next up are memorandums and future council agenda items. There are none this evening. We've already handled public comment, so there's no need for further reply. There are no council referrals this evening, so we move on to reports. Does anybody have any comments on the reports this evening? Councilmember Chamberlain Krenga.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I want to comment on O2B, the Resident Engagement and Priorities Study. So I just want to thank again Assistant City Manager Bruner and Cobalt for adding in that additional question to be able to ask our residents about their experiences in Troy being inclusive and celebrating diversity. So I think that was a great way to just to be able to add that in. Also want to thank you for distinguishing between green space, which is undeveloped, and then our parks, which are developed green space. So I think that was a helpful distinction. I did have a question. I noticed that we're sending the survey in 2 waves and there's 3 weeks in between. So just wondered what was the thinking behind sending it out in 2 waves?
Assistant City Manager Bruner, looks like it's you.
Yes, thanks. I think the way it was explained was perhaps a little bit misleading. It's the wave of letters that go out, and if people don't respond in the first wave, then we send a wave of reminders. So it's actually all the same survey participants, but yeah. And I've been in touch with William from Cobalt, and he's actually been keeping very close tabs on the mail situation and the backup and that sort of thing. And so we waited until we felt like the Postal Service was more or less caught up and took that all into account.
Thank you. That's helpful to understand.
Thank you, Councilmember Chamberlain Krenga. Additional comments on the reports this evening? Councilmember Hoderick.
I just wanted to comment on O2A, the risk limiting audit report. City Clerk Dixon had, in the city, had posted that we could watch, and I did take a look several times. It's a little bit like watching paint dry, but appreciate the transparency of that and what that looks like, and the explanation here in the report of what goes on. And for any residents who have been watching the post-election discussions that go on and have questions, or things have caused them to have doubt, I've really nerded out on the whole thing because I felt a responsibility to do so. The city clerk spent over an hour on the phone with me getting refreshed, really, because she's taught us so much over the years about the details of the election process, but questions that were out there, understanding it, and then watching committee hearings in Lansing, listening, reading, watching. And I just wanted to take a second, and I think there are a number of politicians who have really let our elections officials down in our state. And in the process of me discerning if that was the case, the good news is wow, what an impressive group of people the elections officials are. It's truly God's work that goes on, the detail, what they have to know and understand, and their sincere desire to serve the public in a very fair, accurate way becomes very clear as you sort through the headlines and get past the sound bites and really listen to people on the front lines of this. The good news is I'm more impressed than I ever was before, and I just wanted to note that. And the state goes through an auditing process, and what we can learn from every election and how to improve it, and we're going through that process now. So, I welcome anyone who would like to reach out to me to, if they want to understand, if they have doubts, please consider doing so. And again, thank you to not only our city clerk, but all the team of city clerks across the state that came together and even flagged and warned of these potential misperceptions people might have with the challenge of processing absentee ballots. It's not like we didn't know. And we'll improve upon it. And again, appreciate the transparency of our own city clerk as she slogged through details with us all throughout the process for the many months before. And I just think people need to take a beat, take a breath, and really make sure we appreciate the professionals that do this for a living and how great of a job they really do for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Hungary. I personally know 2 city clerks, and I think they're both very wonderful people, honest and trustworthy, and really focused on transparency and doing the right thing. So it's been troubling to, of the 100% of the city clerks I know do a bang up job, and it's difficult to see so much ire thrown at our election officials when, like I said, the 2 that I know personally are top notch, and it's sad. And I hope that City Clerk Dixon has weathered some of this storm okay. And when you're worried about your city clerk's safety, I think you've got some bigger issues you need to deal with, and that's something we've been having to face in this country. And so, Councilmember Hoderick, thank you for bringing that up and for talking about that audit as well, and for also giving Councilmember Hamilton a run for his money when talking about election issues. So yeah, I think that I'm a little surprised on that one, but anyway, appreciate that very much. Any other comments on the reports? All right, we move into council comments this evening. Any council comments? Councilmember Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to quickly mention, I know that both the ethics meeting and the DDA meetings are coming up in the next week, and kind of shocked me that if February is almost here already. It just kind of hit me today when we're saying that February 3rd is next week. I was like, whoa, okay. But I just wanted to make sure, there's so many topics to cover on both of those. I want to make sure, I just would like council to get any materials or kind of discussion points regarding that and ahead of time. I know a lot of times in special meetings, we just kind of get it right there, get the presentation right there. The agendas are pretty blank, but I feel like for these 2, I just hope we get a lot of the paperwork and presentations, or even if it's rough draft of the presentations early. I just feel like there's a lot of homework to do. I'm going to look at different ethics policies and ordinances and charters from communities nearby us, but any information you have so we can kind of study it over the weekend would be really helpful. You're probably planning to do that anyway, but I just wanted to make sure, because that's a lot of stuff to cover for Monday and Wednesday. So I know DDA, there's a lot of discussion points about we have to form some kind of resident committee with the residents moving in there. There's different things we get, different options for what we can expend the money on, how the future of that's going to look. So I'd like to over the weekend be able to nerd out on it and know what to look at. So if you can provide anything to us before the weekend, I would appreciate that.
You brought up something. I was gonna bring some of that up a little bit. A reminder about the ethics meeting specifically, being that it is a week from tonight. Just a reminder and request for council to. I'm going to flip it back on you, David, a little bit. Come prepared to discuss the topics that you want to discuss. It's my understanding there'll be a session of our study session that will be kind of primarily focused on council discussion, and in order to provide more direction to city management as to where we want to go with this. So I heard you mention looking at other cities' policies and charters and such. I've done a little bit of it myself. But it's my expectation. I think we'll have some presentation, we'll have some opportunity for discussion, and it'll be the start of a continued conversation. We've already started the conversation. It'll be the next piece of a continued conversation, is my understanding of what our expectations should be going in. And City Attorney Bloom or City Manager Miller, I mean, did I say that correctly in your minds? I mean, is that pretty accurate?
Yes, that's what we're hoping for. And again, if there's information that you're specifically looking for, we're happy to take that in advance.
And as a reminder to that, let's not overwhelm them as they're planning for 2 meetings by waiting for the last minute. So if we do have some specific questions that we think might need a little research, it's better to get them in sooner than closer to the meeting, just so they have time to get us good answers as well. Councilman Hamilton.
My only follow-up is just, I've done my own research. I mean, there's hundreds of municipalities throughout Michigan and thousands throughout the country. So I've done my own research. I have a few different examples I want to use, but if city staff if Lori's staff has more examples of like what are the most ironclad examples. I know Rochester Hills has their ethics material built in their charter itself. Some do it via ordinance, some do it just like us with just a code of ethics. I kind of want to get a sense of the different range of options and the pros and cons. I mean, I'll try to put together stuff this weekend, but we can just get as much knowledge as we can of what different options are. That would be helpful.
Very good. Additional council comments? Councilmember Chamberlain-Cranger.
Thank you, Mayor. I have two separate comments. The first is I just want to recognize that this Wednesday is International Holocaust Remembrance Day. And as some of you know, my husband of the Holocaust, who has very much devoted his life to helping to secure compensation for Holocaust survivors. So I just want to urge residents to take a moment to reflect on the meaning of this day and just being mindful that you may have a neighbor, a colleague, someone around the corner who may be a survivor or who was impacted by the Holocaust. Second comment and question I have is around our small businesses. And being a daughter of a small business owner, my heart just really goes out to small business at this difficult time. And I especially think of Randy Norman and Eli of Troy Menswear, who recently closed after 50 years in business. And very honored that we had a chance to honor him and his business in our proclamation that was on our consent agenda tonight and will be read into the record in our next meeting. And I'm trying my best as I get a takeout or get a coffee or pick up a dry cleaning to check in with small business owners and ask how they're doing, if they're getting the resources they need. And one who I know, my dry cleaner, I asked him about some of the recent resources, and I'm so grateful the city and Glenn Lapin in sending out many of those resources. And I asked him how he was doing, and he's been doing all right in terms of finding these opportunities and being able to apply for them. But then the question came to me is, what if in the event that I run into a small business owner who is struggling to make sense of all the different opportunities and to perhaps seek assistance in pursuing them, and just wondered from city management who would be the best person I could refer, say, a small business owner to. Would it be Glenn in the city, or would it be Oakland County, their economic development department? What's the best way for us to be able to help our neighbors, our friends, our small business owners at this time?
It's a good question, Councilmember Chamberlain-Cranger. City Manager Miller?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Yeah, the best person to contact would be Glenn, even if the resources move up to the county, because Glenn is very familiar with those people. So if you don't have Glenn's direct contact information, we can get that to you to give to the small business people.
Great, thank you.
Any other council comments this evening? I don't think I have any either. So all right, that concludes council comments this evening. We do have a closed session, so we will recess into that closed session and then we'll adjourn from after the closed session. So that's it for the public portion of the meeting. So for those watching at home, see you later. And we'll reconvene in about, let's take 10 minutes for closed session. Okay, bye.